So hello and welcome to the second instalment of Focal Talk, the monthly podcast for all things Countdown. I'm Paul Anderson.
And I'm Callum Todd.
And we really hope you enjoyed episode 1, and we've got a great show coming up for you today. So Callum, we got a good bit of feedback on the first episode.
Yeah. We did ask people to leave some feedback if they wish to do so, and I'm glad to see a lot of people have. Both some people have left some very positive feedback about how much they enjoyed it, which is much appreciated. We're glad people are enjoying it, and also we've had some people telling us things that we could do to improve, which is really useful, really valuable to us. So thank you for that, and just keep it coming. If you do have any areas you think we could improve on, don't feel you're being nitpicky or rude or anything. Just let us know, because that's how we can produce a better podcast for you guys to listen to. So thanks very much to everyone who has given feedback so far, and if you're listening to this and you do have anything to add, please do so.
Well, I mean, let's address the elephant in the room, the name. A lot of people didn't like the name. We were on the fence.
The name was a difficult one to come up with, I think, because the subject of this podcast is countdown ultimately, but we can't just call it the Countdown Podcast, because that implies some sort of official affiliation with the TV show or ITV or Channel 4, which obviously that's not what this is. It's just a hobbyist's enthusiast. It's like a audio fanzine, as it were. So
However, we would like to get to as big an audience as possible. I mean, surely, we'd like to attract half that TV audience, wouldn't we?
Yeah, but
1% of that TV audience would be nice. So how do we get them to? Does Focal Talk tell them what it's about?
That is the issue, I think, where the topic we're discussing, that the name of the game is in itself a brand name. So to use that name automatically sort of implies affiliation.
I wouldn't think they have a trademark for Countdown, do they? Now? It's a film called
Countdown. I don't know,
yeah.
But
it's a bit generic.
What I would mean by that is it's difficult to describe. It's a name that is specific to that show and that show only. So if if you were to have the Countdown Podcast, you think it's a product of, or it's somehow affiliated with Countdown. It's the difference between if you had a podcast called the Football Podcasts, it's just a podcast about football. But if you had a podcast called the Premier League Podcast, it sounds like
that's impinging upon a brand. Yes.
The problem in our situation is that the name of the game we are discussing and the name of the organisation which distributes that game is the same. So we have a difficulty in naming there. So
I liked one of the suggestions. I did like the portmanteau of the Downcast. I thought that was quite cool.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just me being.
Imagine you're a new user who comes onto the Countdowners Facebook group, because I mean we see them. There's people comes on and go. They say, "Oh, is this where Zarte hangs out? Is this where Elliot hangs out?" And of course, Elliot and Zarte make them so scarce, quite rightly, when people do that. But these people, they follow up with questions like, "Oh, how does the addition process work?" and things like that. They want to know the inside information, and I'd like to think the show is giving them some of that inside information. We hope to speak to people maybe in the research department of the show to provide a few tips. And my problem with the name is when they come onto this Facebook group, they would see something like the Focal Talk podcast and go, "Well, that's not for me. What's that about?" Whereas if it was called the Downcast, they'd know clearly, "Oh, that's the Countdown Podcast."
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a difficult one to do. I think it will be very difficult to find a perfect name, but obviously we could do better. What I would say is I wouldn't advise rushing to the first name that is better than what we've already got, just because.
No, but for example, it's not bad.
Oh yeah, I just wouldn't want to fuel confusion by having regular name changes. So I'd say maybe a good idea going forward would be to, open suggestions to our listeners. Have you got some good ideas?
We welcome feedback and ideas from our listeners. That's what this show is about. We'd like to engage them.
Yeah, and if we end up with a a little short list of some good ideas, like the Downcast and others. Say if we get 6 or 7 names, whether that takes a couple of weeks, whether it takes months, however long that takes to come up with a little short list, we could then open it up to some sort of public vote. I am happy with the
people are tired of voting these days, aren't they?
I'm ever
a little bit of voter fatigue.
Yeah, I am happy with the current name, and I think Downcast is also a good name. But I'm ever the Democrat, so we will listen to the people's voice. But I would just say we probably shouldn't rush into changing names and stuff, because if it changes name on every release, it loses that sense of
we'd be like David
continuity.
Bowie. It would take years to find the perfect name.
Yeah, the podcast formerly known as Focal Talk for the Prince.
They both did okay.
Yeah, they had a good career, but
I think some people had an issue maybe with the length, but I think these were people who maybe aren't used to listening to podcasts. I mean, some of the most famous podcasts, Joe Rogan, he's well over 3 hours every time, is he not?
Yeah. Well, the running joke with the Joe Rogan podcast is it's 3 hours unless there's someone really famous, like Robert Downey Jr. was on recently for 1 hour, which most people go 1 hour. Oh, that's a really long interview for a Hollywood A-lister. Yeah. But all the Joe Rogan fans were going 1 hour. What's this?
That's all he could afford, I'd say. Yeah, he's paying by the hour.
Yeah. So with the length, I think this is not an exceptionally long podcast. There are some very short form podcasts on like a BBC Sounds and stuff, but they're normally highlights packages of radio shows that are in themselves 4 hours long, so or longer.
Yeah, exactly. I get that. Yeah,
if we just try and focus on what the idea behind this podcast is, when I came up with the idea, what we're trying to achieve here is we want to have interesting and open conversations with interesting and open people within our community. And if you try and put a hard time limit on that, or especially a very short time limit, then you don't really allow that interesting open conversation to take. So
you're just reducing it to sound bites at that stage, aren't you? Really, yeah, you're Robert Downey Jr. promoting his movie on Parky. He's not going to give you anything.
So
outside the box, is he? Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't have time to develop your ideas and think as you talk if you don't have enough time to do so. So, just to give a little insight to our viewers into viewers, are we on television now?
Our listeners, for now.
Yeah, so just to give a little insight to our listeners of how we make this podcast, we just invite our guests to speak to us, and we record our conversation, and there is no time limit on it. We just say, let's have a conversation, and we might have a few points we want to get through with them, that we know certain things you want to discuss with certain people. Like, for example, today we're going to be speaking to Ben, and obviously we want to speak to him about Colin, but ultimately we just let the conversation take its natural course for however long that is, whether it's half an hour or an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours. It just it just goes on.
I like to think we've done that successfully so far, and I think the interview with the legendary Conor Travers will show that. It's a long interview, and we will be releasing the long play format first. We're probably going to get that out pretty soon, aren't we? Maybe as a little bit of a promo for Lincoln, if anyone's wavering.
We're hoping so, yeah.
If anyone's hasn't made their mind up yet if they're going to Lincoln, maybe this will help you decide. And I think people will see that natural conversation develop, and I think that's interesting.
Yeah, so you could say that the long form conversation that we have, that you hear on the long play, is something akin to, like Paul referenced, the Joe Rogan experience, where you get an interesting person in the room with us, or on the line with us in our case, and you just have a conversation with them for however long that takes, and you release it. The short form version is, therefore, we just then edit that for people who don't have enough time to just get in the more interesting or the more useful or the more entertaining parts of that conversation. But naturally, because...
And maybe that would appeal to a wider audience, really, short edit.
Yeah, because I know not everyone is... I mean, if if you're giving up any time to listen to a podcast about Countdown, that's already a niche interest. Not many people are going to have enough time to devote 3+ hours to that, which is fine, but that is the nature of...
Well, we hope they fit us into their weekend schedule or their monthly schedule, that it's just when they're going shopping and when they have their earphones in or they're in the car.
Well, yeah, that's the beauty of podcasts, and that's why that medium, I think, has grown so much over the past few years, is because it's found time. It's something you can do while you're doing other things. Like you can listen to a podcast while doing the dishes, driving, while exercising. So we don't expect people to sit down on their sofas or in front of their computers and listen to us for 3 hours straight while doing nothing else. But if it is something worth doing, it's something I do anyway, and it's not for everyone, I'm sure, but the length of our podcast isn't unusual for podcasts. If you take issue with the length of the podcast, I think you're taking issue with the length of podcasts in general as a medium. And,
in general, exactly.
Yeah, obviously, if you wanted something more like a radio show with some highlights and packages, then maybe that's something that could be produced at some point, but that's not what we're doing here at the moment.
No, it's not the ethos. We're trying to just have genuine conversations with interesting, intelligent people. And I think we talked a lot. We talked a lot last month about ourselves. The only other interesting piece of news this month was Luke. Was Luke completing his Octa run and getting over it and being the second person?
Yeah, second person to beat 1,000, and like Elliot was it 1,061 or 1,063? Elliot's.
Yeah, Elliot was 106.1.
106.1.
Luke's 102.4.
Yeah, so like Elliot had the nice claim of being able to say he got a prime number total with his 1,061. Luke could claim a power of 2 with 1,024.
Yes.
Which was the nickname. I think we were trying to think of a nickname for him based on that, and it's used in computing and stuff. And I think, if I remember correctly, Paul, it was you who came up with the kilobyte.
Yeah, I could work for the Sun.
Much.
I could do those cheesy headlines in my sleep. The kilobyte.
Yeah.
We had it all totted up before Rachel. You could see looking over at Rachel. Rachel was getting a little word in her ear. Yeah. As if maybe from upstairs that he's over the 1,020. He's over the 1,000 points, and 1,024 is just fabulous. He was so cool. He was so cool, and we have Connor chatting about him later on. So I mean that's something for our viewers to wrap their ears around.
Yep. So Elliot is the prime number man, and Luke is the kilobyte. It's a pretty good darts name as well. If you ever wanted to,
it is, isn't it?
To ditch the countdown and switch to darts. That'd look nice on the back of a Jazzy shirt.
He's a bit skinny, but you need a belly. You need a belly for balance if you're going to play the darts. Well, I blow over in the breeze, really. So
enough time playing darts in pubs, and I'm sure he could manage that. He can achieve a lot.
A good decade,
Luke. So Luke was the second highest scorer ever. Beaten only by Elliot Miller, and outscoring some incredible players who've been on before him over the history of Countdown. Dylan Taylor, Giles Hutchins, Zata Siempre. So he's and
this is going to be a short series, so it'll be interesting to see who steps forward to challenge him.
Who's
going to push him?
We don't know too much yet about who to expect. There's obviously been a few rumours on the Apto grapevine, but I don't know if we can disclose them because we don't know if they're necessarily true.
No, we don't know exactly. We can't verify that. But it's definitely going to be a short series because of Rachel's maternity leave.
Yes, so I'll definitely be looking forward to watching who might emerge over the next few months as a potential challenger to Luke. And I hopefully will be able to be there in the studios for the filming of the finals to support Luke again.
Well, lucky you. I'll have to work up my brownie points to be in with a chance of that. But
your journey is a little more complex than ours.
It is indeed. So that's where we're at in the game right now. But so our first guest is talking about the history of the game.
Yeah. Ben Wilson has been around for a long time. He was really here in the formative years of the Countdown community as we know it now.
The online specifically online.
Yeah, the online community. He was a huge part of the foundation of the websites that make up the majority of the Countdown community as we know it. And his own experience on the television show came at a very unique time in the show's history. So he's certainly a man to speak to who can give you some fascinating insights into some quite unusual experiences within the game, as well as obviously being, a fantastic player and the most prolific co-event host as well. So there's plenty that we had to talk to him about, as I'm sure you'll see in the upcoming interview.
Okay, roll VT or AT.
Okay, so we're joined today by our first guest. It's Ben Wilson. Ben's probably best known as the host of the Colin event in Lincoln each January, and we'll get onto that later for sure as it's coming up soon. But first, Ben, we want to talk to you about some of your other experiences. So thanks for coming on, Ben.
Thank you for having me.
So, Ben, you were a series champion on Countdown in 2001 in Series 46. And do you want to tell us a bit about your experience? Because that was a very unique series in many ways. So as the champion of it, you're probably the best man to ask about that period of Countdown history. So what was your experience on Countdown like?
Oh, like you said, it was unique. I applied for the show at the end of 2000. Had my audition in April 2001. At that time, the show was still 30 minutes, 9 round games. My recording date was, I think, the start of October, and had literally switched over to 15-round games about 3 weeks beforehand. Right. So that came as a complete shock.
So you weren't given any warning?
No, the first I heard of them switching over to 15-round games was when I saw the advert on Channel 4.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
And you thought, wow, this might concern me very, very soon.
They advertised the fact that they were going to be switching to 15 rounds.
Yeah, it was a few weeks beforehand.
And what about the fact that in this series there were no Octo champs, were there? Because it was capped at 6 games. So was that something you knew about in advance, or was that a surprise close to the time of recording?
No, that I only found out about that because the first daily winner on the show, Ian McMenzie, only won 6 games, and I've been watching the show beforehand to prepare for going on the show, because obviously there was no actress back then.
Yeah.
So I watched Ian McMenzie on the show, and then he left after 6 games, and I thought, oh, okay then, I'm only going to get to win a maximum of 6. Is this going to be the whole thing going forward, or is it just going to be for this one series? And it turned out it was just for the one series.
Oh, yeah. So it's an interesting one in that in some ways, you got less time on the show than you might have hoped, because you only got 6 games. But going into it, you'd have thought you'd have only get to play 9-round games, and you got to play 15 rounds. So in terms of rounds, you actually got more in than you would have anticipated was possible, I suppose. But
yeah, I think I got 90 instead of 72 is the way it works out.
Yeah, okay. So
I was happy with that.
Yeah, it depends how you look at it, I suppose. You could say it's an improvement.
One thing about that series as well is we didn't know the final was going to be a 15-round game either, because in the previous series it had been 9-round games, but the final had been 14 rounds.
Yeah,
that's right.
And it was literally just before the grand final started recording, we were told it was going to be a 15-round game. We didn't know if it would be 20 rounds or an hour long or some silly format or anything
right,
like that.
Okay. So
that's taken me back. Yeah, I remember that now. That's right. The final used to be extra long, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So was this because they knew all this in advance, but they just didn't tell you in advance, or do you think it was all sort of being made up on the fly?
I think they knew it in advance.
Right. Just you were
that'd be my guess.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they couldn't really make the final any longer, could they? I mean, it was that was the point. It was going from the 9-round format and then especially long final. when they increased to 15 rounds, they couldn't make it a 20-round final. It would have been overkill, surely.
Yeah, that I suppose that's the point.
Yeah, it's a very, like as you say, unique perspective on things, because I know nowadays a lot of the really good players who go on for months in advance, they're preparing themselves for it and they're thinking about it in their head, and they can visualize exactly how many games they're going to play, how long the games are going to be, where they're at certain stages of the format. Whereas it seems that at nearly every turn in your journey, you had no idea what format you were playing or how long you'd be playing it for. So it's definitely quite a unique experience.
Yeah, definitely flying into the unknown. Yeah.
And you seem to cope better than all the other competitors then with this new change of format.
Well, yes and no.
You won.
Yeah, so I suppose that is true.
I don't think you can compete any better if you win.
Well, that's definitely true. By the end of the first day of recording, though, I was definitely getting a bit knackered.
Yeah.
Fourth game, I only just narrowly won on a crucial conundrum. Because I was, by that point, I think I played 60 rounds in a row when I was getting a bit cream crackered by that point, yeah.
So, obviously, as you say, in those days there was no Apterus, and now when people go on, they tend to know how well they'll do both within themselves and also against the opposition, because they know how good they are because they're constantly playing online, and they often know how good their opposition is because they can see them playing online. But when you went on, presumably there was a lot more mystery. Like, did you know what to expect from yourself and how good you were, and did you know anything at all about your potential opponents in that series?
I knew absolutely nothing about the opponents I'll be facing until I went against them on the show. I had an idea that I might be handy at the game because I was recording my own scores against the challengers and the champions on the show.
Right.
As I was watching it going along. That's basically the only way in those days that you could really gauge your own skill at the game.
And your ability at the game, was that, I know you're a keen Scrabble player, were you a Scrabble player before Countdown and that was why you were so good, or did Scrabble come after Countdown?
I was going quite a way out. I started playing that competitive in 2004 and I was on the show in 2001. So that really was just applied for the show on a whim, really.
Oh, that's interesting.
I think there are two dictionaries.
Yeah.
Two dictionaries you don't want to get mixed up.
Yeah, it's very easy to get them mixed up. I've done it both ways. Played a countdown valid word in Scrabble once that got taken off the board, and I might have had a Scrabble word disallowed against Connor.
I saw that, but that is now actually in Oxford dictionaries for Countdown as well. That word was it?
That's unlucky. What was the word?
Upvote. Yeah.
I had upvoted.
That's the standard now, isn't it?
Yeah. I had upvoted disallowed in my time on there as well. So I'll join you in that club, Ben.
Yeah. It still stings.
Yeah, the injustice.
Even after all these years.
Yeah.
Time is no healer.
Yeah. You did actually beat Connor on a letters round though in that game, didn't you? So can't be many people who can make that boast. So,
no, you're in a short list there.
Yeah.
I think Connor played 21 games and only 3 different people have taken the lead against him. So
there you go.
That's an elite club. I can consider myself a member of. Yeah.
We're hoping to speak to Connor later in this episode of the podcast, actually, so we can remind him that.
Oh, that'd be cool.
We're going to ask him about all his losing rounds. It won't take long.
Yeah. See if he still fears you as his conqueror.
See if he's still caught up about them.
I doubt it.
Yeah.
I doubt it too. Yeah, I do.
So that game against Connor that you speak of was in the 30th birthday championship, wasn't it? So can you tell us a bit about what that experience was like going into that tournament? Because obviously it was on a huge scale, like probably the biggest thing in Countdown's history, as far as I'm aware. But there must have been a very big differing dynamic between a lot of the competitors, because it had been over 10 years, I think, since you'd last been on. Whereas some of the other guys in it were relatively new to the game. So what was that like going into that tournament?
It's definitely different than being on either the first time I was on or the Champion of Champions that I did in 2002. Going into the 30th birthday championship, I actually had the ability to practice on Apterus beforehand, which I did, even though I knew I was playing Connor, so there wasn't really much point.
Yeah.
And the difference was I knew everybody, like you said, I actually knew everybody who was going to be there. I knew what their skill levels were like.
Yeah.
I knew if I had the chance, you could pretty much predict who was going to win each game going forward. There may have been a couple of surprises in there. I think John O'Neill and Jack Worsley is the one that immediately springs to mind.
Jono, was that a max game or was it a different game that Jono maxed in that tournament?
No, he maxed the game against Jack. It was 15 for him and 13 maxes for Jack.
Yeah.
So that was probably one of the most elite games of all time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that was crazy. The standard going into that whole tournament was just immense.
Do you think it's preferable then that you go in blind, like in your first experience, when you're primed and you know who you can face and you know the standard of who you can face? Does that psychology play on your mind?
Maybe a little. I'm thinking back to when I was on the Champion of the Champions. And my first opponents on that particular tournament, Geraldine Highlands, had lost a series final, but had been good enough to get to a series final. So I thought maybe I can beat her. But the next opponent was Tom Hargreaves, who was the first Octo champ to score over 800 points. And I thought, yeah, there's a psychological element to that.
Absolutely.
You thought, I can't beat him?
I thought
he's probably going to win, yeah.
Yeah, I thought it's extremely unlikely that I'm going to beat him, but I'm going to give it a damn good try anyway. That's really all you can do if you're applying for the show, having practiced on Apterus a million times, or if you're just going in completely blind.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think blind is preferable.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah, you gave a good showing for yourself anyway. It was a very respectable score.
Thank you.
So as we've mentioned, going into the 30th birthday championship, everyone was preparing for it, primarily playing on Apterus, and you could see how everyone else was playing and preparing for it. And the standard at that tournament was so high as a result of all these players having had Apterus to use and practice on. But it wasn't always there for people, and neither were other elements of the online community. But I think you've been involved in this right from the start and even before, haven't you? So can you tell us a little bit, for those of us who weren't around at the time, about what the online countdown community consisted of before things like C4 Countdown and Apterus, and maybe a little bit about what those sites were like in the early days?
Sure, we're going back a long way here. I've got involved in the online community at the start of 2002 after I've been on the show, and that was on the Talk4 forum, which was hosted on the Channel 4 website. They had sort of like drop-down bulletin boards, very old school, for different shows. So you had one for Big Brother, you had one for, I don't know, Brookside or whatever was on Channel 4 at the start of the millennium. And there was one for Countdown as well, and I signed on to it. There were people on there. Mike Brown was on there. He is the old school person of online Countdown. I think it literally started with him. Other people who were on there, the late Lisa Herman was on there. She was a regular. Tom Hargreaves, Gavin joined a bit later. Once Channel 4 shut down the Talk 4 forums, Gavin started up his own online Yahoo group, which I think that's now been shut down as well, but he's archived all the posts on that as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, that then evolved into a different one called C4 Countdown, which was originally also a Yahoo group. That was started by Stuart Holden in 2004. Ownership of that passed through various people, including myself, until eventually it became a proper forum. The forum that you see now, that was at the start of 2008. Right. And it's been there ever since. If you're talking about playing the game online before Apterus, the very earliest games were played on MSN Messenger. You literally had to have 3 people involved, 2 contestants and the hosts, who, in the very early days of the game, the host would literally have a countdown ball game in front of them and just pick out letters and type them into the chat.
So it was like playing at a co-event, but remotely.
It was basically that, yeah.
And what dictionary did you use?
back in those days, it was still the Noddy, New Oxford English Dictionary of English. I think we switched to version 2 at some point. The last one that we used before Actress was ODE second edition revised.
Right.
So how did you access that? You had someone with the dictionary, one of the hosts
Yeah.
in a game, then would physically have the dictionary in front of them.
Yes, literally that.
Interesting. And these games are all archived.
Some of them. I've got a lot of chat logs saved, but not all the games by any stretch of the imagination. I can remember the very first game that I was involved in was at the back end of 2002. It was actually a rematch of the grand final between Chris Wills and Tom Hargreaves. And I don't know why, but I remember that game. Tom beat Chris 62-52.
He remembers the score. That's impressive.
For some reason, that stuck in my mind.
Wow.
Aye. Sometimes we've no choice over what sticks and what doesn't, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's interesting from a sort of an archive point of view. That there's at least there's a flavour of them there. There's a selection for posterity.
Yeah,
To show the history of the online game. I think that's kind of important.
yeah. The tricky thing with the chat window game, though, is that everybody was in the same window, both the players, the host, and anybody who might be observing were all watching at the same time. So after each round ended, and you had the contestants giving, well, I say quote-unquote contestants giving their scores or their words, literally everybody else in the chat would give their words as well, and it would take about 5 minutes just to get everybody back under control. There were a couple of occasions when some people who will remain nameless, aka John Stitcher, would give answers to the conundrums before the contestants did and completely ruin the game like that.
Oh,
Yeah, that happened more
Not
than
cool.
once. Yeah. It'd be a bit like someone observing a game on Actress and putting the conundrum answer in the general chat. It's just, you don't do that.
no.
So what about Actress itself then? So were you one of the earlier users of that? Can you remember how that came about and what it was like in its first days?
Yep. Before Actress was a web thing, Charlie Reams had actually, who's an incredibly clever man, I might add, had actually developed a program that you downloaded onto your computer. It was a bit like single player Actress. It even had things like classic games in there as well. You could configure it for different letter selections and so forth. He managed to program in a multiplayer version of that, and a few games were played, but it was very much you could obviously tell it was a prototype because it did not work all the time by any stretch of the imagination. But then, out of nowhere, he developed Actress itself. It was him, John O'Neill, me, and Kurt Bevins were the first 4 users on it, and we just played practice games against each other. It was around the same time that Charlie Reams himself was on the show that he was developing.
So in some practice for himself.
Yeah, just it worked as well because he reached the final of his series and of the Champion, so he was obviously doing something right.
And all those formats, I mean, you discussed those between you and just came up with them, just invented those games because I mean they've stood the test of time.
Goat Down was the oldest one that was implemented on there. I think that was invented by Damien Eady himself. So, yep. He definitely came up with the name as well, though to this day we have no idea why it is called Goat Down.
Greatest of all time, Goat. That's what I think when I think goats, don't you? You think Goat? Peter Crouch's
Is
Goat.
that a modern thing though? The greatest of all time acronym? I've certainly only heard it in the past 5 years or so.
I think it is. I think so. I think they talk about goats for footballers and stuff now, don't they? We have 2 on the show today, Callum, don't we? So
wow.
Goat Down has definitely been around since 2004, though.
Excellent. So it goes that far back.
That was played on MSN as well.
Related to that, we were having a discussion about the formats the other day and the bots and how they're sort of set up a little bit for the elite player to get even more elite. And I think Actress is very, very, very good at that. Very good at training the elite player. But I think it slightly falls down on maybe the slightly lesser players. And is there a valid career trajectory for those slightly lesser players, like myself, for example. It's very hard to get to that elite level.
I think maybe a reason for that is if Ben just said the first 4 users were himself, Charlie, Kirk Bevins, and John O'Neill. So there you go. That's a pretty elite opening lineup.
There are bots on there who are meant to be for there's bots that are supposed to be scaled in terms of skill. I think it goes Prune, Nude, Waldorf, Plum, Caesar, Prime, and Rex. The idea is you're supposed to be able to comprehensively beat one before moving on to the next one. You're going to have to ask Charlie about this, because...
We plan to.
Good. Yeah.
I thought you might be a man to ask, because you were involved in such early testing, that you might know how they were sort of formulated, as you say, that slightly incremental approach. Yeah. But I think I think they some of them. I mean, Plum, for example, Plum can come up with max words a lot of the time.
Yeah,
and I find I was losing to Plum all last week.
Yeah, back in the days, the first 3 bots on Actress were Prune, Plum, and Prime. The idea was Plum's supposed to be equal to someone who appears on the show, maybe someone who wins about 3 or 4 games. Prime is Octochamp level. Back when it was originally invented, Prune would regularly score about 40 points a game. It wasn't just something that sits there and allows itself to get kicked in.
Do you think that needs tweaking now? Do you think, as a training aid for the general contestant who probably knows about Apterous now, who knows that if I'm going on the show, I should get on there and practice for a month at least?
Maybe. You definitely, if you're serious about going on the show and doing well, you do need to practice on Actress. That's without question. But I think the best thing would be to play other people on Actress, because you get a variety of skill levels playing on the actual game itself rather than just the bots. And it's always more realistic.
Most of those people are elite players.
I think that could be the best way to learn, though. Like any competitive element. Yeah, I think in any competitive thing, you learn well from playing against the best. Obviously, it's nice to be able to play a game and not get your ass kicked every time, but it is still a good way to learn. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, Ben, was we know for this year you've had the countdown calendar come out. You've offered that this year. So for those who don't know, the calendar's like it's a sort of a flip calendar, isn't it? I don't know if there's a technical term for that. It's one page per day.
You're a model, Ben, are you?
Not quite. It's just a desktop calendar. It's got a conundrum a day and either a letter or a numbers puzzle. You tear off one for each day, and it's just something to keep the mind active. They were originally done by Stuart Holden, who was given the quote-unquote contract to do them back in 2005. He's since switched over to doing the Scrabble desktop calendar and asked me if I could take over for him. Cool. And I wasn't going to turn that down.
Define that quote-unquote contract. How does that work with affiliations and TV companies and all that?
Well, the publisher, Carousel Calendars, they're the ones who've got the license to make the countdown calendar, and they basically just ask someone who knows about the show, someone who can produce the puzzles, to make the puzzles for them. I email them a spreadsheet filled with puzzles for the whole year, and they just print it onto a calendar and publish it.
And does one receive remuneration for this?
Yeah, there is a fee that I charge for it.
Okay, no, that's good. So as long as you're not giving away freebies, then yes, it's
definitely not.
Your own time and effort goes into it, so fair play.
We should take a moment to appreciate that Ben has been perhaps the first amongst us to find a way to monetize his countdown.
That's impressive. We're both interested, Ben. That we'd like to be able to monetize this show at some point.
I've said to people for a while, it's very frustrating to have your foremost ability at something to be something that is of absolutely no material value. So credit to you, Ben, for finding a way to get some cash out of this.
It's like the question they asked Elliot, wasn't it? So is there a career in this for you? You're like, no.
Not a lot of money in anagrams.
It's just countdown.
So there's no contact between you and ITV or anyone direct, so then it's the calendar company gets the license from the TV studios.
No.
And then once they have that, they've got free reign to go and contact you and get it produced that way.
Day, I think, is Rachel Riley's birthday. So, well, when it was recorded, it was Rachel Riley's birthday. So I put down the Conundrum Scramble is that Rachel, DAC Rachel.
Ah, nice. That's
So
good.
there are a few things like that in there as well.
Very good. Also, coming up at the end of this month, we've got the big thing, the thing that you're known for most in the community nowadays, probably. We've got Colin coming up for its...
Yes.
What iteration are we on now?
This is the 16th year in a row that I've done Colin.
Okay.
Which is Co-Lincoln for the uninitiated.
Yes.
Yeah, we should say that.
Not just a fella called Colin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has there been a Colin at Colin before?
No.
You should get free entry, really, if your name's Colin.
Colinception.
Yeah, there's a Scrabble player who lives in Scotland called Colin Nicol. His surname is spelled Nicol. So that's ultimate Colinception.
Like Steve Nicol as well. Yeah, Colin Nicol, beautifully palindromic.
I like it.
Yeah, sadly I've not been able to tempt him down to Colin, Countdown in Lincoln before, though.
Okay.
Well, he has to get free entry. Come on, if your name's Colin, it's a given.
Wasn't there for the 11th Colin? Didn't you find a guy on Facebook, a Chinese guy who was called Colin G, G or however you pronounce that?
Colin Shi, yeah. That was just beautiful. That.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to it. It's my first Colin, so I'm very much looking forward to it. To meet a lot of the faces I haven't met before. So.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to meeting you as well. It's always great to have new players at the event. I think something like 150 different people have been through the doors of Colin in the past, and it's always great to welcome new guys.
Colin is, of course, North Hykem's number one attraction
for one weekend a year. I don't know if the Travelodge in Thorpe Hill actually does any business at any other point in the year.
You single-handedly kept that business alive, kept people in jobs. You know, you should be mayor of Hycombe, frankly. But
this will be released just before Colin, so people won't have long. But for any last-minute people, how do they attend?
If you look on Facebook, search for Colin 16. It's in Roman numerals, so it's Colin XVI. Or go to C4 Countdown. It's in the Countdown Events Forum. Basically, you send me PayPal. It's £16 to enter both days, or if you just want the Saturday, it's £12. If you just want the Sunday, it's £8. Send it to my PayPal address, which is in the C4 Countdown thread, and I'll add you to the entry.
Definitely encourage anyone listening who hasn't already done that to do so.
It feels like a little bit like an AGM. I mean, I'm not in the group that long.
It really is.
It sort of feels like it's the gathering of all the events. Yeah. It's like if you're going to go to one, go to this one.
Maybe I've heard that said in the past. It's not the biggest event in the year anymore. London is, and Milton Keynes is usually the same size or bigger.
London's got no soul. Lincoln sounds like it's got a bit of soul.
I think it's simply because it's been going on so long. There's some people have said there's some sort of prestige attached to the events. I don't know. I know.
I know. From a newbie perspective, that does. Yeah,
I know. If I started trying to do an event in Lincoln from scratch, if I've never been one before, I don't think it would be anywhere near as successful. By the events that I've done in Nottingham, the best attended Nottingham event got 23 entrants. The worst attended Lincoln event got 24 entrants. So that should tell you the prestige there.
Yeah, it's a 2-day event as well. So does that attract people more?
Yeah, yes and no, because before I made it a 2-day event, the first 9 events were just 1 day. I noticed a lot of people were staying over, and because trains in and out of Lincoln are crap, they were having to wait sometimes until 3 p.m. to get a train back to London. And I thought they could either sit around all this time doing nothing, or I could actually put on a second event on the Sunday and give people something to do, a chance to say goodbye properly, rather than just buggering off out the pub and staying in the hotel for 6 hours.
So this is Countdown the Hangover on Sunday. It sounds appealing.
For
an Irishman, anyway, that sounds appealing.
Yeah, that was the most appropriate name I could think of for it.
It works. It works.
Yeah.
Can we be blamed? We don't get out much.
Not really. I know that there's been some people who've attended The Hangover virtually dead from the night before and have actually gone on to reach the final. I'm not sure how pissed Eddie Byrne was the night before he actually won The Hangover.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think he was.
I don't know.
Well, Irish, we can handle our drink. You see, that's the.
There were definitely stories being told that day about Eddie and a certain hotel room television. But yeah, the less said about that, the
better. Enough said, I think. I hope.
So,
leave it to your imagination.
As you said, Lincoln's now in its 16th year because it's
not even that.
It's the longest running event because it was the first event and it's continued every year since. So, what was the thinking behind putting on the first event then? Because I know nowadays it's something everyone knows that co-events are a thing, and every now and then someone decides they'd like to try one. But when you brought the first co-event into reality with Colin, you were, sort of a pioneer. So what was the thinking behind that? How did that come about?
The main inspiration is the Edinburgh Countdown Club, which really deserves kudos for being the first gathering of Countdown fans ever. Equivalent things to co-events have been running in France as well, but my idea for Colin, it was originally to actually do a Countdown Club, a fortnightly or monthly thing in Lincoln. That got interest from about 3 people. So I thought that's not going to work. Even though I was actually interviewed on Radio Lincolnshire in 2004 with the idea of setting it up, and they actually had Richard Whiteley on that interview as well.
Wow.
So yes, that idea didn't work. As I said, I only got about 3 people interested, but factored into the idea for the Lincoln Countdown Club was that I'd have the occasional open day where it would be held on the weekend and everybody would come along, or that'd be invited from across the country. I've been to a similar thing at the Edinburgh Countdown Club in 2003. Me, Chris Wills, Tom Hargreaves and Gary Woodward went up. And it was essentially the exact same format as The Hangover. It was on a Monday evening. They played 2 rounds and I had a final at the end. And I thought, okay, I could do something like this in Lincoln. I was at university at the time, so I was able to hire out the University Student Union Hall for free, put notices on C4 Countdown as it was back then. I started playing Scrabble in 2004, so I was able to get along a few Scrabble playing friends as well. Stuart Holden was at the first Colin, and so was Russell Byers, who was a Scrabble player from Nottingham, who was also the runner-up of Series 2 back in 1983, so there's some appeal there as well. I just hosted it the same way Anita Marr did in Edinburgh, threw in a few things from that I'd learned from Scrabble tournaments as well, and lo and behold, the first Colin was held. Chris Wills won that one. I thought, I could do this again next year. So I did. And 15 years later, here I am.
So you're well established now. But what do you see for the future for the event? Where would you like it to go?
That's a tough question because I think Colin has expanded. Oh, thanks. You're welcome. I think Colin's expanded about as far as it can get. Having an event on Saturday and Sunday, it's not like I can put one on the Friday evening because everybody's too busy getting pissed in the pub. I can't put one on the Monday, even though I thought the name Colin the Autopsy would be an ideal name for a Monday event.
The coroner's report.
Yeah. Really, in terms of expansion, the only thing would be getting more players along. Yeah, that's really it. So if you're out there and you're listening,
getting people to bring their mates along, really. I like the idea of the sort of drop-in nature. I think you should be encouraged to bring along your friends or bring along people who might not have the same level of interest as you, but will still have a good day out among funny, clever people. And I mean, all the people I've met are I suppose, way less nerdy than you'd imagine, and far funnier. And everyone I met's just been lovely. You know, I mean, I don't know whether that was a prejudice of mine, but it's been overcome if it has. You know, it's
Perhaps, I suppose. Yeah, it's surprising the mix of people you get at a co-event, the mix of personalities as well.
yeah. I think that's that for me. That's the social aspect of it is as attractive as the gameplay.
I'd say the social aspect's more attractive.
Yeah, I think that's why
probably,
Lincoln
yeah.
itself is still one of the biggest and best and most loved tournaments, I think, because it is one of the more social events, I think, and that's people come year after year to see the people that, you know, sometimes you've got friends that you just see that once a year at Lincoln, so it's I'd say, for me anyway, it feels like the most social event.
And folk aren't driving home. I suppose folk are staying over as well, and maybe having a drink or whatever they, or a large orange juice or whatever they prefer. You know, to have that, to have those chats, to have those non-gameplay chats, to get to know your fellow competitors and mates. You know, they become friends then, I think. And
yeah, when I was going to my first call-in, I was speaking to Zati about it, and at the time I was just planning to, you know, because it's not too far for me, I was planning to travel down on the morning, do the event, and then travel home on the evening, and everyone was telling me, like, no, you really must stay for the weekend. It's really worth doing. That's what it's for. And I think that's one of the advantages that Colin has over some of the events in the bigger cities, in that because the hotel's quite affordable. You know, a lot of people are more inclined to stay over and make a weekend of it, and that's what helps it be the more social event that it is. And I think that's why it's everyone's favourite. Yeah,
it gives it more cachet, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it helps also that there's one of the advantages of North Ireland being in the middle of nowhere, that you either interact with each other or spend the whole weekend staring at a tree or something.
yeah.
That can be depending on the weekend. That can be the preferred option. Really,
I've heard there was once a white Colin, I believe. You know, a snowy Colin. Has that happened more than once before?
Yeah,
2010, I would imagine.
it was
Or was it
2020. I think it was 2013. Yeah, that 2013. That's also the only Colin that Mike Brown never came to because he had to drop out due to the weather. That's just a little factoid. Yeah, that damaged attendance numbers a bit. 2013. I think there was definitely a snowball fight at some point as well.
Oh, great! That's class.
Yeah.
But it's great to be snowed in. It's something you enjoy, isn't it? So you know you have a captive crowd then, really. So
it's also causing me immense amounts of panic doing an event in January because you never know if the weather's going to completely ruin it.
I think the end of January is the best time to get people out. We used to put on gigs at the end of January, and people have their dry January. They tighten the belt. They go, no, that was me last year. I'm a changed man this year. And come payday, 25th of January, they're raring to go. They're itching to go out. They're itching to do something and meet up with their friends and, you know, let their hair down. And I can see that. I have a mate who has a birthday 4th of January, and he could never get a soul out for his birthday. It's just, you know, unfortunate.
Yeah, but you've got the right time for it there.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's Colin, the history of it, and the next one, number 16, is coming up on the 25th. Have I got that right?
Yeah, the 25th.
25th? Is it?
Yeah,
25th.
25th and 26th.
Oh, that's a Saturday, isn't it? Yeah.
The next one's coming up on the 25th, 26th.
Yeah, hang over the following day.
Yep. And if you do want a desktop calendar, all good bookshops, Amazon, the Countdown 2020 desk calendar, Ben's the author. Is there anything else?
Will you be bringing any with you?
Yeah, I could bring a couple of samples along.
Yeah.
I might be giving them away.
I'll buy one off you.
Well.
We're not looking for
from your personal collection.
But, we're not. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Money will change hands. Money will change hands. Gladly recompense you.
The best way to do that is to buy one from a local bookshop, though. That's where they get the sales figures from. So that's what's more likely to make them ask me for another one.
Are they available in Ireland? Or do Easton stock them in Ireland, I wonder?
Well, they might do. Amazon certainly ship.
Yeah, if you get it from Amazon, I'm sure.
Yeah, let's make Jeff Bezos richer, huh?
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks very much for talking to us, Ben. We really enjoyed that conversation, and we look forward to seeing you at Lincoln.
Okay, well, that was Ben talking to us earlier on the history of the game and the countdown calendar, and lots to get your ears around in that interview. And who have we got coming up next, Colin?
We've got one of the most iconic names in the game, really. He's, for sure, if you want to be very specific about it, he is definitely the most naturally talented letters player in the history of the game. Many would go a few steps further and say that he is the best player in general in the history of the game. He won the most prestigious tournament in Countdown's televised history at the 30th Birthday Championship. He was a child prodigy before that. It's Connor Travers.
So welcome to the show, Connor Travers.
Hi, thanks. It's great to be here.
So you enjoyed the first episode?
Oh yeah, it was good. I particularly enjoyed hearing from James, and I think like you could really kind of get through kind of the emotions he'd had, having won the series so recently, just kind of how much he kind of got into the whole scene.
Did it bring back some memories for yourself?
It did, yeah. Actually, like this was the season where I think since the 30th birthday, the only series I've kind of watched, probably most of it in like the whole continuous flow. So I actually got into it quite a lot, and yeah, it was extremely high standard. And yeah,
I'm biased. I thought it was a great series, but I'm not the person to ask. I was part of it.
I guess,
so.
yeah. I think series, you can always judge the quality of a series by its 5 or 6 time winners. I mean, you just have to look at that series. You have to look at Callum's series to see that Zarte didn't even make the finals, and he turned out to do quite all right.
Yeah, I think there's a thread on the C4C forum at the moment of, unluckiest contestants, and there seem to be a lot of names cropping up from the same few series, and that's probably the best way to judge the quality of a series, by who didn't make it to the finals.
Who didn't, indeed, yeah.
And where do we start with Connor Travers? You're a very humble chap.
I try not to be a bit humble. Maybe not a kind of false humility. I don't know.
Yeah.
At some point, if you're too humble, it's just you're basically just lying.
Yeah,
you are, exactly.
Yeah, you can be so humble it becomes dishonest. Yeah,
but I think it's kind of being maybe a bit humble, but kind of putting it in perspective. So.
I think I'd like to start with what's your earliest Countdown memory? What's the first thing you remember about the TV show Countdown?
I remember watching it with my mum, I think, when I was about 4 or 5. And actually, we misunderstood the rules. So in the letters round, when someone would declare 7 or 8, I think we thought that was the number of words they'd found in the selection. It turns out you don't even have to start off even knowing the rules.
So you had many more words than their paltry 7.
I was very confused. Like, why were they always declaring in this very narrow range? Like, why were they?
Yeah, that reminds me of a game we had at school, which was like that. And I think my teacher was probably a fan of Countdown at the time, because this would have been 83, maybe 84, and I was at primary school. And it was, she'd give us a long word, like anti-disestablishmentarianism, and we had to find as many words from that list as we could. So maybe you had something like that in
I think something like that. I think
your education.
Yeah, also in the newspaper you'd have these kind of word wheels where the idea was to have 8 or 9 letters, find as many. I think I thought it was something like that. I remember at the beginning of
9 segments. Yeah.
Or
8 segments with a circle in the middle. The 9th
and a
was
circle in the middle. Yeah. I remember it was in the Sun, and they actually even varied it between 7 and 9.
Other newspapers are available, of course.
My My reading age has increased from there.
I'm sure it has. Yeah, my granny was a Daily Mirror reader, so yeah, I remember it from the Mirror. We used to do the easy crossword and the word wheel before we would get into watching Countdown.
The Mirror has a good one now.
Yeah.
They just call it the Mirrorgram, and it's just a 10-letter conundrum basically. There's some pretty good ones on there.
It's good practice for maybe for London next year if they decide to use 10 letters again.
Yeah, for sure.
Ooh. Yeah. That's controversial. In my recent experience, there's been a certain resistance to any change of format. There's a certain sanctity.
Yeah, personally, I would have been, before having experience, I would have been probably in the same camp, but I actually enjoyed the 10-letter conundrums a lot. I'm not just because I did okay at them, but just because I think it added a new level of, it was just kind of like playing the game again for the first time. It's not just seeing a word you've seen 50 times before, and whether you buzz in 1 or 1.5 seconds is going to determine the game. It was kind of like,
and there's so many words you've excluded when you're restricted to 9. There are so many common 10-letter words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a real problem actually. I think for the like for instance setting champion conundrums, the field of kind of excellent conundrums is very small. You want something that is reasonably, at least if not commonplace, it's reasonably guessable, but not too easily guessable, and not something that probably a lot of people have practiced.
Yeah.
And once you have that, you it's really often is quite a small selection.
Yeah, we've overfished the waters of 9-letter conundrums.
That's a good.
Yeah,
I like that.
yeah.
That's good. Yeah, that's very very EU. That.
Well, yeah. What?
We got quotas. We're going to introduce conundrum quotas now.
We're going to go for Nexit, like leaving 9s.
Yeah. So when you discover and you're watching this with your mum, and you were playing a slightly different variant of the game. When did you realize that you had an aptitude for the game and that you might fancy a go yourself?
When I first watched, I didn't feel I had much of an aptitude for the letters. I felt I was better at the numbers. And I would assume this is the same for most people if they watch it when you're very young.
Yeah.
Because once you're like
I think so. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Once you're a bit brainy and you know the basic operations, you can more or less do whatever you like. Mm-hmm. Whereas you still need to have at least some base vocabulary to get better at the letters. So actually, I think when
age and experience helps. Yes.
I remember, I didn't feel I had much aptitude for the letters. I occasionally get a few conundrums. I think when I was maybe 9 or 10, I remember watching those. I was watching it at my aunt's house, and there was a word. I think I was maybe 11 or so, and there's the word climaxed came up, and then I said, and then Dictionary Corner didn't even get it. I thought, oh wow,
that's a word an 11-year-old shouldn't know.
Yeah, exactly. I think I didn't know even what it meant.
You're a little young. Your mum probably was like, "Oh, your auntie. Oh, let's not talk about that."
Yeah. Maybe that's why Dictionary Corner stuck with the game.
This game is terrible for a terrible influence on a young mind.
Well, yeah, you can't discriminate on the meanings of words. I've always been clear on that.
Yeah. I found that in APTER. So many people know many, many, many words, and you ask them, "Do you know what that word means?" No, don't care.
No,
don't care.
It's just.
I just know it's a 9.
It's a permissible subset.
It's worth 18
letters.
points. Yeah. Yes, exactly. It's we love rearranging. I suppose maybe I remember when I was young looking at car registrations, driving down the motorway. We were going on our holidays to France, and we get the boat to Stranraer, and we do the M6 all the way to Dover.
Yeah.
So millions of car registrations, and that was my little game in the car, was rearranging them, and do the numbers add up to 9? Little things like that, little sort of nerdy
just things to kind of keep your mind ticking over. Yeah.
Yeah, we had no in-car entertainment back in the day. It was fight with your sister or look out the window. Really, that was it.
Yeah.
I looked out the window.
No, I remember playing like some X, J, Q, and Z game. You just had to look and try and find cars with those letters in. I think I remember playing
I'm not
Scrabble.
alone then. That's good.
Yeah.
Oh, so you had an interest in the letters then. When did that develop?
I think more when I think that developed more when I actually just started watching the show. I think the official.
Were there any players? Were there any players that stood out for you? Anyone
Yeah,
you
so
thought,
the first player I watched was Stuart Holden. He was a top Scrabbler and series champion. He was the first. Well, I have vague memories. I even have vague memories of I think Wills. I think even Ben Wilson I can vaguely remember, but I didn't watch it. And Stuart Holden was the first contestant I watched. Like, I think the official story goes that I was off school for being sick, but I think I was probably sick for 2 days and then I was bored, so I just decided I'll stay off for the rest of the week and keep watching. And then
lucky you.
And then I was immediately hooked. And I think this was the first time I felt like Stuart was like there was a nice combination that I felt like I had a bit of aptitude for it. I was sort of keeping rough pace with challenges. Stuart was kind of just obviously destroying both of us, but I could kind of feel that this was like the first time I kind of got an appreciation for how the game could be played.
Yeah, and that you were good at it.
I felt like this is actually something I could be quite good at. And then
How old were you then?
I was 12 then.
Right.
12. Wow.
And then I had a video recorder, and then I just started taping it. And I think I was just
I'm watching it, but
I'd watch it every day after school. It was kind of like my own like.
So it became a bit of an obsession. Then did you became your thing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was kind of like my sort of nerdy way of kind of treating myself after school. Because when you're 12 or 13, you don't really learn a lot in school. You don't want to. You don't want to. You don't. Yeah.
You're a bit resistant, aren't you? Really, people can't tell you anything, and
I mean,
you learn through osmosis rather than any kind of.
Yeah, it's just you're just not really interested at all. But this is like my kind of way of coming home and actually doing something useful with my brain.
So you were 12. So you were 12 years old, and did you apply and get in first
No,
time?
Actually, I was on the borderline case. In the first time I applied. So to apply again, which was probably actually a bit of a blessing in disguise because I mean I think I applied almost immediately, within maybe 2 or 3 weeks of watching the show. I guess it is also like historically Meltdown has had kids on it before, so when I started watching the show, I knew this was something like you could go on, as opposed to watching like quiz shows or Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and you're like, well, okay, that's 4 years away.
Yeah,
that's for adults. Yeah, that's for adults. Yeah, exactly. I think I had the same as well. But I just didn't do anything about it, Connor, and I think that's why I admired the young ones when I saw them on. It was a little bit of sort of envy, but admiration as well. Going, I should have done that. I could have. Yeah, but I was into it when I was 12, and
I guess like I had the feeling like because it did become a bit of an obsession, but I didn't know how long it would last. I thought, okay, while I'm interested, I might as well just give this a go. Like I don't want to, because I asked, I think on the forum, the Kevin Countdown, back in the day. And like whether you should apply, and people had varying advice, and some people said, well, you should maybe wait until you win a series, or wait until you can win Champion of Champions. I thought, well, to be honest, I don't really have any sort of expectations for this sort of for planning in the future. So I thought, okay, I'll just go for it.
I want to test myself now.
Yeah,
that kind of
exactly.
thing,
like maybe in a year I'm completely bored by Countdown, and I've kind of like
I'll be into girls or
yeah,
whatever.
of course,
and,
yeah, hopefully. Yeah, always optimistic.
When the distractions come
Yeah.
along, you see, you might not have time for your little intellectual pursuits.
Yeah, so
It's a good age because you're unencumbered by distractions.
yeah,
at
you're
that
just
at that age.
about starting to well.
It's most boys are into sport at that age. You know, it's something you have an obsession with.
Yeah, I mean.
But I mean,
Yeah.
I was the same. I had that Countdown love. I wish I'd had your nerve and your will to sort of just go. Yeah, I'll test myself now. I wish I'd done that too.
The kind of the innocence of youth sort of thing, like go.
Yeah.
And
And you were beating most of the challengers.
yeah,
at
I
this
think
stage.
like pretty quickly I found I was beating most of them, and I found like what I found that was very apparent was that I was just retaining like the words pretty well.
Well, that's something I want to ask you about later on, but we'll come back to that about your memory. So tell us about your experience when you went to the show. How did you meet? Where did you stay? How did it feel as a young boy? Really, was your mother with you?
No, so well, there's actually like it became a bit of a drawn out process. To actually get it recorded, because the original plan I think was that I would have been the first episode of series 54 after the scheduled Champion of Champions. And at this point, Richard Whiteley was ill at this point, but it didn't look particularly serious. And so, a line of kind of guest presenters had been drafted in to kind of to just fill the gap while he was recovering. And so I went up to film. Actually, at first the Champion of Champions was scrapped, so then I went to film just kind of straight after the series, and then the night before I was going to film, Richard passed away, which was just completely shocking. And then I think kind of for the next few months, the idea of like filming, like it was just pretty far from everyone's mind and kind of pretty far from my mind even. It was just, like, first, is the show going to go ahead? Okay, it is still going to continue, but you just kind of, realize that, like, I mean, even at this age, even as kind of when you're, I guess, past 30 now, like, even at this age, you kind of realize that there are still more important things than actually just filming the game show. And then so then it was...
It's such a legend of the show. I mean, it's a bit like Queen trying to play on after Freddie died.
It was,
isn't it? There's not the will.
It was almost just, you couldn't really imagine it. Like, you'd been there for...
No. And did you curse your luck? Did you think, oh, if I'd only applied a few months ago? Do you think it was never going to happen?
Yeah, a little bit. Because then I went, so I was also going to be the first episode of Des Lynam's era. So I think at that point there were two episodes filmed. I think to be filmed badly to kind of like, I mean, it was his first time, so it just to kind of like gently break him in. And then I went up. I was with my dad this time. Everything was kind of going well. I knew, of course, because how everything had been screened. I knew who the champion was. I knew a little bit what to expect in this regard. Everything was kind of going fine. There was kind of a lot of preparation before the first game, of like, understandably. I remember feeling like quite like, I mean, you feel nervous, but I actually felt almost, you started to feel nauseous. And then kind of at one stage, I went to the toilet, and then I just threw up everywhere.
This is before your first game, or in the middle of
This is
your
before my
first
first
game?
game.
Before your first game.
I mean, it was about maybe 45. Now I think I felt better again. It should be fine. And then we kind of got we kind of went to makeup. Had everything done. Was kind of getting ready to record. I was kind of walking down if I was going to go to the studio, and then I just felt sick again. Ended up dashing into like some side toilet, throwing up again, and then it just it just didn't stop from there.
Oh wow, Connor!
Yeah. So then
Was this nerves or a bug or what?
No, it was a bug. It was a bug.
It had to be. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was very confused because I felt nervous, but I mean I guess the joke.
Not
from
that nervous.
I've been nervous lots of times.
Projectile nerves don't make for projectile vomit, really, do they? So
No,
it's, you know.
Like I was waiting in the green room, like with kind of lying on the sofa with like a sick bucket.
Oh God!
What's
in the green room, eh? Yeah.
Yeah, watching
when you're feeling green.
the standby contest recording, and I was lying there, and I don't think I've ever played until that point like such a good game. Like I watched it and I got the max every round, and I was thinking, seriously, like is this actually ever going to happen?
And so he recorded first. Then this was just a screen test almost. Then was it?
So we had a reserve contestant, and he played. The contestant who was going to play second on the day, he played first, and then a reserve contestant was brought in from like locally in Leeds.
Okay, right, to give you a little bit of time to recover.
But I think it was quite clear that like at some point, like I was definitely not be able to record, and then even we decided to just head back, and as I was driving back, I just kept throwing up the whole way, which was at least reassuring because it told me, okay, it's not nerves. It probably is.
It's not.
Yeah.
No, I've left the studio environment and I'm still throwing up.
I'm still
not nerves.
Yeah.
So it sounds a little bit, it sounds like you still don't really have it straight in your head what happened that day. It sounds a little bit like your head and your body were all over the place.
It was also a very long day. I think I remember like how normally you're maybe in the studio like a couple of hours before you record. I think this day it was kind of it was like 5 hours.
That's a long time hanging around, isn't it?
Yeah, especially as presumably I was already feeling not so good and just unable to distinguish it between not feeling good and feeling nervous. You just don't
It's that horrible gap as well. You just want to get on with it. It's as a musician, it's that gap between sound check and playing. You hate it. You're just sitting around going, please, come on, hurry up. Let's get this on. I'm maxing games. I'm maxing games in my head right now. Let's go. I'm good.
Yeah.
So what happened then?
Yeah, so I think I got a new filming date. It was about maybe about a month later. And then, this time it just went well.
You slept well, and you weren't worried.
No, not especially. Like I always found it like quite hard to sleep before the game. I remember before the 30th birthday, I don't think I slept before any of the games.
No, I'm the same. It's very hard, isn't it? I think. Yeah.
I think I just kind of accepted it. I think
you're not going to sleep. Yeah, you do. You're only going to get a sort of cursory sleep that night.
Yeah, maybe the couple of hours or something like not. I don't know. Not REM sleep or.
No, exactly. Yeah, it's very fresh in my mind.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I think as well, maybe when you're young, it also just it doesn't affect you as much. Like now, if I haven't like, don't sleep for a night, I'm usually a bit like a zombie the next day.
Yeah.
But
You
like,
think about it, it's on your mind, isn't it? It
yeah,
plays on you all day. Don't you know I didn't sleep last night? I'm emotionally fragile right now. Yes.
like yeah, I don't know. Back then, you just kind of take it as it like in its stead. Um, yeah, I was just delighted with the initial Octo run. Um,
Yeah. For $8.90 for a
890.
14-year-old is crazy. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
I mean, and I was
That was roughly my target as a 44-year-old. You know, so
yeah, yeah. I mean,
I still
'cause I
didn't
think
get it.
well, yeah, I had just the luck of the draw. But at least you've probably been responsible for the most entertaining game like of the last of the last series and last few years.
That's very heartening to hear a legend like yourself say that, Connor. But I couldn't possibly comment. But I'll take it. But anyway, back to you. You're the guest. Callum and I spoke enough about ourselves last month, by all accounts. So we've kind of covered ourselves for the next few episodes. I think that we don't need to. So you got through your Octaron, and there was a bit of a gap. Then you had at least 6 months nearly to wait
Yeah, because
before you got back.
yeah, it was. I think. I mean, it was even longer because it was. It was actually the longest series ever because it only. I think the first episode was broadcast end of like, around end of October. So
Right.
and because that was too
And the
short,
finals weren't till May.
and the finals weren't till May. Yeah, so it was kind of a long wait, but it was. I mean, it was what it was. It's not like it was a lot of fun just to watch the rest of the series to see other top competitors emerge. There was
Do you feel you had improved in that 6 months? What had you done to prepare for the finals?
I
I mean,
think
there was no Apterus, so I mean, how did you prepare in
so.
those days?
So back then we used to basically play online countdown on
On MSN Messenger,
yeah,
okay.
which
Yeah, we were talking with Ben about that yesterday, so that's. Yeah, he was saying certain games of those are archived.
sorry.
So he said certain games of those are archived, which I'm sure would be quite interesting for those involved
Oh, indeed, yeah.
to have a look at.
Yeah, I think we had I think we had recaps even of like online games as well. It was like basically it was kind of similar to Actress. You just didn't have the efficiency, given that basically more or less only one game was going on ever at one time. And of course, yeah,
There's something attractive about that as well. Everyone's watching.
yeah, it was
sort of makes it an event, doesn't it?
yeah, it was fantastic. Like, I think like you sort of you'd come in and yeah, you'd just spend like I spend most of my evenings just kind of like if not playing then watching,
Playing or spectating.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
or like often hosting or being the dictionary corner.
Or being dictionary corner. Yeah. So
it's
everyone got to know their Rachel role and their Susie role and and their Nick role.
yeah.
What was it like during your initial series being on at such a young age? Like, were you the only younger person in the series finals, and your opponents were all I'd imagine they were all adults. So was there a bit of a weird dynamic there at all, or did it just feel quite natural to you?
It actually felt relatively natural. I think what was nice is that we had, I think, in our series a pretty. I think there was a pretty good level of camaraderie especially between the finalists. It was not the case. Okay, I was the number one seed, but it was not the case that I was the number one seed, kind of like by a mile, and it was all done and dusted sort of case.
So there was no envy or sort of antipathy or whatever towards you because you were the young upstart. Was there any? Senior embarrassment?
No, I
caused
don't.
by that?
I don't think so. Like at least, yeah, I don't think so. For instance, one of the who I played in the semi-final was the legend Paul Howe, and I played Paul at a few co-events. I played him online, like many times,
Yeah.
so we kind of knew each other reasonably well. Um, and I think you had John Harvey, who I didn't play. He was on the pre-seed, and he was very cool about I think the whole situation, and also Matt Shaw was who I played in the final. Like was a top player, but I didn't feel like there was like a real strong
Yeah.
kind of competitiveness amongst the finalists. Whereas I don't know.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes it easier in the green room, doesn't it? That makes it's everyone's more relaxed.
Oh yeah.
I find
yeah.
that with our group as well. We all got on well. Whereas I've heard of previous groups. I won't mention which years, but I've heard of previous groups.
I
could
could
a little bit of needle.
get. Yeah. I think what is maybe a little bit nice is that I think back at least there wasn't much time for kind of needle to develop. Like if you get my drift, like if you're all playing on Apteros sometimes, and you kind of can see that what's going to happen is you're all going to be in the same series. It's like it allows time for it to build up. Whereas like back then it was kind of harder to know who would be in what series, like which contestant belong. Like you don't have expectations. It's like so firmly entrenched, and so you just didn't really have that so much.
Yeah, if anything, that'd probably help to develop that camaraderie you were talking about, because it's sort of like an element of shared experience there, isn't there? Where when you know so far in advance that you're going to be sharing that experience, it's easier to see it more as a competitive thing than a communal experience.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, I think as well. I think maybe without playing so much online, like also at least amongst myself, my own expectations were not so crystallized. Like I didn't expect to win the series. Like I didn't. It wasn't a question I ever really thought of. And I imagine this is a bit the same with other kind of contestants in my series, and also probably like around that era. Whereas now I get the feeling more and more players wait until they know they're at a standard where they kind of should win their series.
Yeah.
And then that kind of builds its own expectation.
Yeah, and often they wait until they know no one else of their standard is also applying for the same series to try and get a clear run.
Yeah. Not sure how I feel about that, but yes, I like it.
Yeah. But did you get a lot of did you get a lot of public attention as well, Connor? With obviously because of your age, were you in the news a lot and stuff?
Yeah, there was quite a lot, like even more than I would have even imagined.
Right.
Like there was, especially like I was in like all the local newspapers. There was in I think like most of the national newspapers.
Right.
Both the original Octorun and the finals. I got recognised a lot in Luton. That's where I'm from. It's not just random.
It wasn't where Connor Travers cult was based.
That's right.
No, it wasn't.
And how did you feel about that? Did you enjoy it as a young man? Did you enjoy the attention?
I did quite enjoy it. I somehow didn't like. I found it like a bit hard to react. As in, I didn't. Maybe I think when you're at that age, I didn't actually myself see it as that big an achievement. So I sometimes felt a bit a bit sheepish. Kind of feeling like, well, I mean, it's only a word game. Like you just
Well, that's that humility I was talking about earlier, Connor. I think, I mean, it's you know, you're not the sort to say, yes, I was so great. Look at me, yes, you know, cover me, shower me with flowers.
Yeah.
I'm, you know, I think there's a certain humility in the game.
Yeah, well, I think
You know, I don't know any loudmouths in the game that go, look at me, I'm so great. You have to, because there's always someone around the corner who could beat you. So you don't want to be. You have to sort of be careful what you're saying.
I think once you do reach that level, I think it's very easy to just plateau if you do start to just yourself all these things. And again,
believing your own.
And
hype,
again, you
yes.
need to just put some context around it. It is like a good achievement, but it is. I mean, it's kind of like a word game. It's great to be good at it, but it doesn't necessarily confer some sort of superior, like, moral value. You just, just take it as face value.
I don't remember anyone else that probably had the media coverage that you did. I mean, I'm thinking recently maybe Elliot or Zarte got a fair
I think
bit.
they.
But you, I mean, I don't remember anyone else that went as national as you. I mean, I didn't watch all of your games. I watched some of them. I would have been working at the time, but I would have watched some of them. I remember some of the Des series, and you had Des O'Connor.
Yeah,
as well,
for the 25th celebration, I had that.
Because your name is a name within the game that I would say everybody knows. You know. Even probably more so than Elliot or Zarte. It's a name that people have known over the years. It's sort of embedded in the
to kind of actually even be considered. It's like when I started, I read about all the greats, like kind of Harvey Freeman, like Alan Saldana, who was on.
Alan Saldana was my guy, really. That's who inspired me. I should have applied when I was 12. But anyway.
Yeah, and then like Julian Fowl as well. Mm-hmm. Like, and to even be kind of considered in the same, sentence as them is fantastic.
Well, I think that's definitely the case. I mean, you've inspired, I would say, more of the current generation than anyone else. And I know I said this to yourself, my conqueror Jamie Wing said you were the reason he took up the game, and I'm sure he's not alone. And I sarcastically thank you for that contribution.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
You said I can't remember what your line was, but yeah.
So you mentioned there, Connor, the 25th anniversary special episode you did. What was that like, filming that? Because I've not seen it, I have to admit, but I've read the description of it on the wiki, and it sounds like arguably the most bizarre episode ever of the show. So what was it like to be involved in the production of that?
I think it was a little bit just by kind of circumstances outside of everyone's control. It was a bit chaotic in the sense that Des O'Connor had been a bit ill beforehand, and I think there was like a little bit of like, oh, okay, is this going to be filmed? Is it not? Is he like? So then eventually he was kind of well enough to do it, but I think he was a little bit subdued, probably just to how he was feeling. The episode kind of went ahead. For me, it was actually like I don't remember much of it. I remember like there was a numbers round, like we didn't have a choice in them, and there was 3 lots of 6 small, which at that point my numbers were not really. To be honest, they were pretty garbage. And
it wouldn't have been your pick.
Yeah,
well, back
like I think when I started, at that point I never really practiced the numbers. And if I practice them, they tend to. If I don't practice them, they tend to go. They tend to deteriorate quite fast.
We were fascinated by who set the questions or who set the rounds.
Yeah,
some huge names:
Brown.
Sir Richard Attenborough, Sir Patrick Moore, Sir Alex
awesome.
Ferguson, Terry Wogan. I mean, some big. Did you get to meet all these people?
I think all these were pre-filmed, so we just kind of had these broadcast without them actually being present. They weren't standing there, but it was awesome just to even. I think like just even be kind of like kind of name dropped by maybe Gordon Brown, and I think Amir Khan. It was like, wow, that's something you can like kind of always tell people
that these guys were fans of the show, and when you're on at the time,
that was
quite
I know.
a good feeling that these guys probably watched your game. I mean, that something people always said to me, or I said to someone in the pub one night, I was like, "Do you know the Queen is a big fan?" So I was like, "You watch my game, probably." They were like, "Shut up, she doesn't know."
No, she's she's probably very good. Like she's probably watched.
She's probably not watching right now. She's got other things on her mind right now. But poor Lizzie. Poor Lizzie's feeling a bit short-staffed right now, isn't she? So
she'll have it on record. It's all right.
Yeah.
Do you think so? Yeah, she will.
Oh, I think she definitely.
Yeah,
she's Sky Plus.
She knows how to use the series link. She's fine.
Well, she has a man that does it for her. I'm sure. Anyway, he knows.
I mean, she fast forwards. She like each round is only 5 seconds. So I'm sure she can fast forward.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she just end round early. Yeah, I got it. I've maxed this game. Who does that Connor Travers think he is? I could take him. Easy. So I'm fascinated by the bold. When you look at the Wikiapterus, I'm so used to looking at the Wikiapterus, but then when the bold names stand out, you're like, oh, what were they? Oh, they're Max Games. So you're one of how many people? How many people?
4, I
think. How many people have got a Max game on the show?
Yeah, there was Kirk.
3, 4.
Kirk was
4
first.
overall, and Connor has half of them.
4 in 15
rounds.
There will be a few 9-round Max games as well.
So I think Kirk got the first, didn't he?
Yeah,
and then I think he got the second as well in the 30th birthday championship. Yeah, then Jono got one. I think.
Indeed. Yeah.
And then you had a hat trick.
Yeah, well, I had one,
right,
then Jono had
order?
one,
Okay.
and I had 2 more. And then, because Jono's. So mine was in the second round, and then Jono's was in his quarterfinal, and then my quarterfinal was the one after, and then the semi-final.
So your last 2 Max games came against the only other 2 guys to have got Max games themselves, weren't they? Because you got them against Kirk and John. Yeah, and then
it kind of lends it a bit of poetic.
And then I think the only person to have maxed a game on TV since you was Dan McComb, I think, a few years ago.
Yeah, I think in his series finals he did it. Yeah, quarter or semi. I don't think it was the final.
And for those of us who could never hope to achieve a max game, how does it feel? Does it feel like a 147 in snooker that you've cleared up?
I think there's a certain like feeling of it's just very, very satisfying. Especially like it's like because when I was on first, it wasn't a thing that was ever talked about. So I never really considered it at all. And there were a few close ones. I think even before that, there were, but it was like I think before after us, it was just not so realistic. And I think when you're kind of in the community, often you speak to people, and then they'll be like, "Well, you played well in that game. I beat you in round 6 with this word," and there's a nice level of satisfaction that no one can actually tell you that. Yeah, they tell you they got the conundrum in 0.3 seconds.
That is true. People will say, "Oh, you did so great." Yeah, but I beat you on this round, and this round. You're like, okay, thanks. You kind of.
Yeah, because no matter how well you play, especially with some of the high standards, you might look at a game and think, yeah, it was okay, but if I was playing, Jack Worsley or whoever, or Kirk Bevins or John O'Neill like you were, they might have beaten me. But if it's a max game, then the opponent is irrelevant. You'd have beaten anyone with that performance.
That's it. You've just made the opponent irrelevant.
Exactly.
You've consigned them to irrelevance. And is that would you say those were your greatest satisfactions on the TV, or are we talking winning the tournaments? Are they the most important?
No, winning the tournament was kind of much more satisfying. You wouldn't swap 3 max games
for a win, for a tournament win. Yeah.
For losing. Yeah. I think if you would do that, it probably says something about it.
Yeah.
In the end,
it's all about the trophies. It's all about
that's. I think that's actually it's just what the game is about. The game is about you've got an opponent, and your job is just to beat them. And how you do it doesn't actually really matter as long as you keep on doing it. And it's.
So talk to me about the 30th birthday championship. I mean, that was a crazy standard, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was pretty insane. I think it was sort of as well. It was so much fun because you knew in advance that it was going to be a crazy standard. Okay, maybe here and there it could have been a bit different, but part of the fun was just knowing, when you were training, you knew you had to be exceptional to win.
One slip and you could.
And
lose,
if you're going to win it, yeah, exactly. And if you would probably have to be exceptional in, say, 4 or 5 games out of maybe the 6. And even then, it's not enough. Even the semi-final against Connor, if it had been a different word, he would have beaten me. I could have maxed 2 games and all the way up to the semi-final, and it still might not have been enough.
So you beat him on pulsated. He played sulfated. There wasn't much in it until the conundrum, really. It was just that 8.
Yeah, and I think that's I kind of was dreading the feeling of a crucial conundrum beforehand, even though I kind of knew it was an inevitability. There is no way you can win such a tournament without having at least one crucial conundrum.
It's hard getting 2 rounds ahead against you guys. I mean, any of you guys, you're such a high standard that you'd need to have a bit of a mess up to either, to be 2 rounds ahead. Someone needs to make a mistake.
I guess this is why it was a bit, in the final, it was a bit unfortunate that I got a 9. Because then, you kind of spend the whole game knowing that even if you play at your best, it might not be enough to get 2 rounds ahead. And then suddenly early on you had...
you had ponytails. Wow, that's a great 9. Not a lot of people are going to see that.
Yeah, I think...
So you knew to keep a straight bat from then, and you knew to sort of protect your lead, I think. Was that the mentality?
Yeah.
Once you get ahead and then don't make any mistakes.
Yeah, but I think at that point I started to feel real pressure the first time. Because before you just... Yeah, at that point, finish line was
you had a few low-scoring rounds. There was a 6 and a 5, and you're thinking, there's probably more. Maybe he's got one more than you, because you had an 18-point gap for a long time.
Yeah, but I think how I felt with these tournaments is that you don't you at least, because no matter how good you are, you're playing someone else who's also exceptional. And you know that it's really almost a coin flip. Maybe it's slightly biased. If you're better, you're slightly biased in your favor. You never really expect to win. But when I went 18 points up, to be honest, I couldn't really delude myself.
Couldn't enjoy it.
Whereas kind of at any other point, if I'd lost, I like to think that I would have at least been quite philosophical about it. It would have been, I'm disappointed, but you accept it happened. Whereas if you kind of get an 18-point lead in the final, yeah, that doesn't happen. That's not something you expect.
And you still, but the fact is, you still couldn't relax. I mean, I think that's heartening for the lesser players who are playing people. You know, when you're playing anyone, you know that's either as good as you or very, very similar to you. You can't make a mistake, because that mistake just lets them in. So even someone like yourself feeling the pressure is kind of comforting, a little bit comforting for I think for the lesser players.
Oh,
even you're feeling it against, because you know one little slip and he's in. One Steven Gerrard moment could ruin it.
Oh yeah, even the second numbers. A couple of times I mistook a 50 for 100. I thought that the target was 616 is 56 times 11, like kind of out of nowhere, and then kind of like then I solved it, and I think I had the feeling like that was like my Gerrard slip. Luckily, someone got back, and I think from that moment I kind of relaxed a bit.
It's cruel of you to mention that.
Well, yeah, but you're in a pretty good a pretty good position this season.
Are we talking about Liverpool? Yes. Sorry, no, we'll not bore the audience with more Liverpool talk. So you think that gave you your greatest satisfaction was that match, was handling that pressure then and sticking it out, keeping that straight bat and not making a mistake.
Yeah, exactly. I think that was very, very satisfying, because
and Jack is no slouch.
No, he's
definitely no slouch. Yeah.
No. And yeah, I knew like any mistake, we would just let him in.
And that's pressure. I think we all feel it. I mean, you're playing someone that you're much better at. There's no pressure at all. But when you can lose, and it does funny things to the mind. You start seeing 50s as 100s, and you start seeing 3 S's where there are only 2, and little things like that. You know, I'd like to know, Connor, maybe leaving your countdown experience behind. Well, what do you think of the state of the game today compared to when during your halcyon days on the show? I mean, the ratings are not what they were. I mean, when you were on, they were still in the millions, I imagine.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was definitely. I think when I was on, there was like a bit of a boost, because it was a kind of after Richard passing away, there was a renewed interest to see how the show was going to cope with it. It was for a while, it had a very favourable time slot. I think some point out, like maybe I'm thinking even 4:15 or 4:30.
25 past 3. I'm a 25 past 3 man, and always will be.
Yeah,
that was the key slot. That was home from school. The kids get to see it.
Yeah, exactly. And now they become kind of not after school, but it's actually just kind of daytime TV.
It is, yeah. I think that's a failing. I think that's a modern failing. If it was me, if I was in charge, I'd be looking for that 3:25 slot again.
Yeah.
Oh,
to
yeah.
get the school kids, to get the teenagers, instead of them coming home from school and sitting looking at YouTube.
Absolutely.
To sit with their granny and watch Countdown. And
yeah, that's what I do every day. But I guess the thing is, you just maybe don't see now the influx of players that there used to be. I've been maybe a little bit inactive over the last few years. I've not really kind of kept such a close eye, but I think what you see is that players like Luke and Elliot, that once they do get interested, they are like no worse, and in their cases, like 2 of the best of all time. And it's just, it'd be a bit of a shame that you don't have a bit more of that. Like for instance, Elliot kind of got the feeling he kind of joined, and then for a long period he was kind of like the only kind of young, new, absolute top player for a while, which is a bit of a shame.
It's nice now that as well as Elliot, obviously there's Luke as well, and there's potentially a couple of others coming through, like Joseph and that. But
Yeah, Joseph, I think, is very
yeah, I think you're right to highlight those
And,
two,
and Ronan.
and Luke. Yeah, and Ronan. Can't forget Ronan. And I suppose
Ronan when he comes of age. Yeah.
I'd say probably the closest we had to that before Elliot was Bradley Horrocks, who was, obviously a little bit older than Elliot, but another top player.
Bradley is very good. Yeah, to be fair, even
I think you're referring to that interest that you garner on from the TV when you have a young'un who's in there. I think it does excite the audience an awful lot more than someone in their mid-20s or their mid-30s doing exceptionally well. There's that we treasure youth, and we like to. I think a lot of people would have looked at you, Connor, and saw themselves at that age. They're living vicariously through your experience.
Yeah, I think maybe as I get older, I can kind of appreciate more of what people see in it.
And you would like to see another Conor Travers, another young one come on the screen.
Yeah,
so what's it now? 16.
16.
So we're only looking at 16-year-olds.
Yeah,
and above.
I think as well, like it actually, like, I don't necessarily mean youth just in kind of pure age terms, but also in just kind of bringing a new kind of vitality. I think, like, I'd say
it's lifeblood, isn't it?
It's lifeblood,
youth are the lifeblood of anything. Yeah, it's like in football. You want to see a few academy products coming into the first team, don't you? You don't want to just see the overpaid adults playing all the time. You want to see that the future of the game is healthy.
Yeah, I think the future of the game, and also in a wider context, the future of the community itself.
Yeah.
So, like, I'd say contemporary with, like, when I first got into it, you had, for instance, one Charlie Reams, also a top player. But I think what it's done outside of just appearing on the show is, like, unparalleled.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think it's great that you can have like an environment that would kind of foster that sort of, like,
entrepreneurship.
Yeah, exactly. And I think sometimes it's like, once you have a few people who are kind of advancing, like Countdown or Aptocraft or whatever, you can just kind of get the whole effect, like snowballing.
Yeah, it's like the rising tide.
Well, that's, I think, what we're trying to do as well. We're trying to do with this as well is to sort of unite the tribes and gather all people under sort of one umbrella to express their views on the game. And I do think there should be an awful lot more back scratching goes on within the various sort of Countdown sects. SECTS.
Yeah.
Not SEX kids.
And, like, now as you look back on your time in the game, Connor, like, how do you conceptualize Countdown now within the wider context of your life? Because obviously it's something you've spent a fair bit of time from, and it's something that's been with you through a lot of developmental phases of your life, and you've obviously been an exceptional talent within it. Is Countdown still something you consider a big part of your life and your personal history, or is it more just like a side hobby for you?
I think kind of at the moment it can just be a bit of both. I think what I've tried, like, since is that neither extreme works. Like, I found that sort of, I don't know, is it like comparing it to an addiction or something? You can't fully give it up. Like, I think that part of you, like, just never goes.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
And even like now, like, the idea of, say, like, there being maybe another big tournament or even just playing at co-events, it still gives you some like rather nice feeling that I think that if you try and kind of deny it, like, you can't really be true to yourself.
No.
But also trying also realize it is, for me, just a hobby. It's not a livelihood. There is kind of like a wider world out there, and while like I still want to kind of remain involved, um, you want to kind of just get out there and kind of do other things in your life and learn new things, try new experiences.
And not be all consumed. I mean, it's very very sort of similar philosophy to say maybe someone like Ronnie O'Sullivan. Maybe you've achieved maybe most of what you wanted to in the game, but you still love it, but you realize it's not the be all and end all.
No,
it's not.
Yeah,
it doesn't fully define Connor Travers.
No, and I guess maybe one thing, at least with Countdown, is you're never under the illusion that it can be, because you can't become a professional Countdown player.
no.
Shame.
And I think, it is a pity. But at least you never fully get like addicted. But it's kind of like just managing your own interest levels kind of within yourself. That's like your biggest challenge.
Yeah.
And how do you stay so good? How do you stay so good? Then how do you? It was someone who doesn't really play Aptris anymore. How do you keep your form up?
I don't know.
Or is this a secret? Is this a trade secret? This is it.
There's no secret really. I think.
Do have the words just stuck then? Have they stuck? Have they implanted in your head forever? Is that it? You'll never need to refresh your memory again.
It is something a little bit like that. I find that when I've started watching and like all these new words come up, like you can kind of remember them, but you just can't remember them as well. As like often remembering some word from some show that I watched like 13 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Those
are
lodged.
I don't know, the mental programming of your brain you do with Countdown and something like language learning, where sort of generally seen that the younger, the more instinctive it becomes.
Right.
And I don't know if there's certain parallels.
I can vouch for as you get older, doubt definitely introduces itself much more. There's a confidence of youth. I remember. I think with the number, especially with the numbers, I found words. Yeah, once you know a word, it's kind of implanted. If you either know that word or you don't. If you can use it within your sentences, but the numbers I found, I had much more confidence and certainty with my arithmetic when I was younger. That now I sort of doubt myself. If I'm having a slow day, the numbers are hard. I need to be on form. I need to be feeling sharp and clever that day.
Yeah, I guess like with the letters, like once you see a word, it's most of the time it just is a word, like, because why would you have seen it if it's not, unless it's something sounds dodgy like an unword or a reword. Most of the time
Are you photographic in terms of your memory? Do you see images, or do you just remember the words? How do you access your memories when it comes to Countdown? Are they visual or are they?
It is visual. Like it is. I think it is visual, but it's not like. I wouldn't say it's like when people say, "Do you have a photographic memory?" I would. It is kind of photographic, but it is also imperfect. It's not.
Yeah.
Like I would remember it in terms of images, but these images also can be wrong.
Yeah, they can be blurry. Yeah, exactly. Or
It's. I think I have a strong kind of maybe, like kind of autobiographical memory. That when I remember things that have happened to me, and especially like remembering words in the context of watching the show or playing at show events or playing online, that they tend to stick quite strongly.
Yeah, that's why I know one of the best pieces of advice that's been given to people who are really wanting to improve the game is to play more at events and watch the TV show and things like that, rather than just spamming online bot games, because if there's more of a experience attached to that word, it's much easier to recall it later on.
You probably don't remember the time Rex beat you, but you'll remember the time Elliot beat you.
Yeah, exactly. It'll
Although sometimes it is easy to mistake Rex and Elliot.
For the benefit of the audience, Rex is a bot on aptris.org. He's not our dog.
Yeah, for me, actually, I was going to say that, like, kind of with this, I had advice. Like, one thing I did is that I stopped playing, before the 30th birthday, I stopped playing kind of bullet rounds as much as possible, because I found it was just an ineffective way of making words stick.
Yeah, I'd agree.
You stopped playing bullet, or you say?
I think, like, for the few years, the only interest I'd kind of, like, occasionally log in and play, like, some bullet letters attacks. But
I like a bullet.
It is good fun, and I think it trained me a lot. But I realized that what would happen is that when I started playing normal 15 rounders, is that I would either spot the word probably in the first 5 seconds, or I would just blank and just see nothing.
I've fallen into that trap before.
Yeah.
I find I'm no better in the next 25 seconds than I am in the first 5 seconds. I either see, so maybe it doesn't teach you to sort of be thorough and look for that one longer. That
especially if it's like skill to kind of work out or dig out like some that's often like what wins you the match is like digging out like a especially a co-event, to be fair, like digging out some.
A last minute 7 to beat the 6, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, just like you it's very easy to otherwise just kind of often blank rounds, and this is often what just loses you games.
Mental laziness. I sort of have a mental laziness sometimes of seeing that word that I'll get every time in the first few seconds, and sort of not looking, not spending the next 20 odd seconds. Trying to keep looking. I'm a very much an end round early, and that's probably comes from playing bots, and not where it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I think it is easier to foster that complacency when you are like such a natural player, and you just sort of rely on that common experience of these words just falling out of the sky to you.
Popping
sometimes
out.
You do sort of have to, like building blocks, put the words together, but Especially
the 2-word, the sort of 2-word conundrums. I'm not.
The compound words.
Yeah, the compound words. I don't like those at all. I very rarely see them.
They're a weakness of mine as well.
How do you view Aptors these days? You're not a regular participant. Was it? Had you just had your fill?
I think I'd say it's
too much.
Yeah, it's a little bit like that. I think the problem I find is if I play, it can be a bit comforting to just play something you're quite good at, but often thing is not great, and you need to kind of at least maybe sometimes just challenge myself a bit more, get out of my comfort zone, try new hobbies.
So talk to us about your other hobbies. What does Connor do outside of Countdown?
Well, at the moment, I have quite a lot of free time. Well, at least over the last few months, I've been traveling quite a bit. I was in China.
You're based in Amsterdam, isn't that right?
Well, no, actually, no. I'm based in Ireland at the moment.
Oh.
Yeah. Although I'm
whereabouts?
In Donegal.
In Donegal? Oh, that's up near where I'm from. I'm a Derry man, so
all right.
Looking across at Donegal.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful part of the world if you've never been.
Oh, it's lovely. It's lovely.
How do you fill your free time then? What else floats your boat?
Well, recently I like traveling. I've been traveling. I was in China, I was in Japan, I was in India. Kind of
wow.
A bit more, a bit more exotic countries. I like reading quite a lot. Although it's something I've not been doing too much. I've been trying to learn a bit, like kind of more practical skills, like trying to actually cook. Actually, to be honest, just spend more time like with family and friends,
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of devoting myself more to individual pursuits.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Are you a sports fan at all? Do you like to keep fit?
I am a big sports fan, mainly watching. I have actually been trying to keep fit.
Mm-hmm.
I quite like
Seems to be
I quite
a
like
big drive
gambling.
these days.
Yeah,
You like gambling.
yeah.
You like, ooh. So you're a
Like
poker shark.
Well, I'd say mainly sports gambling. I'm actually pretty bad at poker. Like poker feels like the sort of thing like I should get into, but I've just never quite managed it.
Yeah, you could lose your house and all that, but it's one of those, isn't it? I don't trust games like that where you can literally lose the clothes on your back.
Yeah,
You know, very late night pursuit as well. You know, that's where Countdown needs to go in. It needs to be on one of those like late night poker channels, people playing for money.
yeah. I mean, something where you bet like how convinced you are. You have the longest word, or there is. I'm sure there's some variant there.
Yeah, or a bluff, or you can have a bluff.
Yeah, you just yeah.
You can say, "I've got a 9." Oh, fold. I only had an 8. Ha! I didn't have a 9. Damn.
Yeah, I guess this is one thing. Like, I guess Countdown is it's a perfect information game. So it is relatively it is relatively simple, and the simplicity is kind of its strength. But it does mean that at some point the ceiling is very much kind of within reach for human players. Whereas, something like this might introduce a bit more fun.
When will we see you on the TV again? Then I assume you'll be expecting an invite for the next Champion of Champions.
Oh well,
or will you?
I don't know. Maybe
with the 40th. When is the 40th? Is that the 40th? Is in 2023, or is there any other before that?
Well, I'm not even certain the 40th is a definite go ahead. Maybe it'll be saved for the 50th. But that's a very long time away.
I would, if it was my decision. If that was my decision.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like definitely like not trying to exert any pressure at all to any, because I'm sure, of course, no Countdown executives would be listening, of course. But I wouldn't be exerting any preference or.
We'd love to see you, Connor. We'd love to see you. However, if any Countdown producers are listening, we would love to see Connor on the TV again. I think we all would.
Oh, not just me though. Like it has to be the full repertoire of countdown stardom.
Just you playing a Connor bot. That's what we need. Just to see. It's just all you and you in Dictionary Corner as well. Because you've done all these jobs. You've done all these jobs on MSN Messenger. So
I know. Yeah, yeah. Then I don't mind wearing a dress. Like that's fine as well.
Oh, we're getting some good stuff now. We're getting to the good stuff.
Let's say the rest.
Can we just clip that quote out and put it when you asked him what his hobbies are? I mean,
yeah. I know. I'm a lumberjack and I'm okay. I'm going to have that in the background.
yeah, some unscrupulous editing.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, the rest of the salacious gossip can be hidden behind the paywall, I'm sure.
We have to monetize this show somehow. We need to. Do you have any ideas? How can we get this show to a bigger audience? Because that's what I think. The Countdown audience is massive. It's just how do you get to them? Unless you be honest, do it in the ad breaks of the show. How do you get to that big audience? Because they're out there.
I think like one thing that the Facebook Countdowners group very well is reaching this wider audience, because you do see that there are a lot of people who follow the show pretty regularly and have like kind of an appetite for stuff like this. So maybe this, or maybe I don't know. I like something on Twitter. I don't use Twitter, so I don't really get it. But like, it seems that a lot of people maybe find out or interact with like Countdown through there, whether they watch TV and tweet.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think we need a presence there. I do. Because I do. I think there's a massive audience. I mean, Countdown, when you appear on the show, and as a recent entrant, you realize they come out of the closet. You know, it's everyone's aunties and cousins and grannies and granddads, and they all watch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
it's not Countdown's not something you shout from the roof. But my word, there are a lot of shy viewers out there.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of the appeal of the program. You don't need to have a strong voice or a strong opinion. You don't need to absolutely love it. It's kind of like it's a very simple yet endlessly enjoyable game. You can play along at home in your own time.
It's an institution, really. I'd love to see it I'd love to see it in the schools, and I'd love to see a 325 slot again. I think that's how we get the next generation, and I would be up for not restricting it to 16-year-olds. I think that young blood. I'd like to see a Ronan on the show. Would you not, Callum?
Yeah, for sure. From a viewer's point of view, I would just say I think the reasons why they do that are more logistical and legal than from a productive point of view. So I don't know what the answer to those questions are. It's not my area of expertise, but for sure from a viewer's standpoint, I think it'd be great to have some more whiz kids and child prodigies.
That's why we have Connor on here today, because Connor was that he's the number one child prodigy the show has ever had, and I think and probably the biggest name in the show for that very reason. So we want a Connor Travers for the 2020s.
I think at least I think that's something the show has just been always been strongly associated with the show is young people going on and doing well. Like
Yeah.
And the lack of ageism in the show as well. That's why I was surprised when I rejoined the community last year and I realised that it was only over 16s now. It's just I thought, well, this show just doesn't have ageism. We all watch from a young age with our grannies. There's and when you go to co-events, people hang out. People in their 20s are hanging out with people in their 50s and having a great time, and no animosity and no ageism and. I just think the show has always been kind of known for that, so it's a little bit surprising when they have an age rule.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it was always kind of known as the show that appealed to students and pensioners alike, and I don't think there's any other show that can cover such a broad age range.
No, I can't think of one. I can't think of one at all. So we want to get the major players on here. We want to get Damien Eadie on here. We want to get Charlie. We have a few others who we'd like on. Because we're all stakeholders in the show. We all love it.
No, absolutely, yeah.
And we want to protect its future. And it's we live in a very sort of everything's being sort of dissected and stratified. Rather, I'd like to bring everything back together and have a sort of common voice for the typical fan, not just the elite player. I think the elite player is quite well served in the game. I'd like to see the sort of the non-elite player have a lot more chance for progression to get to that standard.
Yeah, I think just spreading the message is definitely the first way to go.
Getting it into school.
Yeah,
I mean,
eventually.
Someone like yourself, Connor, carries a lot of weight within the game. Your own views on things like that are going to carry much more weight than myself or Callum.
Well, I think it's something that it's something that would be great. I know, like it's something that's always been popular with teachers. I had a teacher who used to play. Like we'd often have to do like a few letters rounds and a numbers rounds in like year 5. So it's always something that's been very popular as an educational tool.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. That's a question I think we'd love to put to Damien Eadie if he's listening.
I think one thing, one thing I think that would, like, kind of maybe long term, if you wanted to open it to like a broader audience, would be kind of a more like mobile friendly. I think you've mentioned this before, or like a mobile friendly version of Apterus.
Yes.
I don't really want to sit down on my laptop and play Countdown and like log in. But if I'm on if I'm on the train and I have my phone, and I'm taking a 20-minute train journey, it's the sort of thing that would be absolutely perfect for just kind of logging in and playing a few games.
And it's slightly imperfect at the moment. I mean, you can do it, but it's kind of have. There's a lot of scrolling up and scrolling back down within rounds to see the letters and see the numbers. And I would like to. Yeah, you're a phone guy. You know, I think most of us are. We have our smartphone, our little personal computer in our pockets these days.
More towards that. And I think you look at the popularity that something like Words with Friends received.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess still which is based on Scrabble, which is okay. It's always been, I guess, more popular than Countdown, but it's fundamentally more or less like a very similar game
with a viral response. I mean, that's Apterus could go. I mean, it's a lot more highbrow, but I do think Apterus should appeal to the lesser player as well as the elite player. I think it caters extremely well for the elite player. But if it was an app on the App Store, it would be expected to cater to a lot lower standard as well, and give them a career path, give them a chance to get as good as Callum Todd, hopefully someday. You know, I mean, would you would have liked that, Callum?
Possibly. I think I'm less mobile oriented than a lot of people. I am planning this year to revert to the dumb phone, but. Yeah, I think that's definitely where the market is for other people, and for people wanting more resources to improve, then I'm sure there are more things out there. But I think an entirely new model is required. Just perhaps a modernisation of what currently exists. So, like you say, a mobile version of Apterus would be a huge start, because I think. Apterus clearly is
with much more variations on the bots for the junior, for the lesser players.
Yeah, although I still maintain that the best way to improve is to play people rather than bots. Obviously, the bots are helpful because of the sheer efficiency of it. You can play so many games against them. But yeah,
I suppose I'm coming from it from the point of view of making it more of getting a larger audience.
Yeah,
having 10 times as many users on Apterus.
Yeah. But the facilities are there for people to improve. They could be better, but they are there because, the players that are elite players, didn't sign up to Apterus and max their first
Didn't
game.
start off as,
They became elite through using the existing technology. Obviously, some of them might have been predisposed towards.
Well, they're predisposed.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, they're all clever folk.
I don't know if it was Jono or Gavin. I think, it was Jono speaking to Gavin once on the forum. He suggested that Gavin would never reach his level because he lacks the raw genetic material. So there's obviously some element of...
That's Hitlerian.
Yeah.
That's Hitlerian, it is, isn't it?
Maybe not that far. But, obviously some people maybe... I think maybe everyone has a ceiling. But I think everyone...
A glass ceiling.
Mayhaps.
You gotta smash through them.
Yeah, but I think, for sure, that ceiling for most people is a long way above where they're at now. And if we can help them improve, if that's what they want to do, because some people really aren't bothered about the standard, they just play for fun, then yeah, that's great.
I'd like to see many of them. I'd like to see many of the countdowners. I'd like to see many more of them on Apterus. And actually, but they're not being attracted there because they know by reputation that the standard is really, really high, and there's a certain fear. I had a certain.
I think this is where having a larger user base would kind of almost make the problem disappear.
Exactly.
Then there's no And then I think you probably have now a case where a lot of players who are decent from just watching the show, they log into Apterus, they get destroyed by the elite players a few times, and they think, I'm not going to bother with this. Whereas, kind of, if you actually, if there was easy, if it was a larger user base, it'd be more easy to match them with kind of similar standard
Or
players.
players who are just slightly above you, maybe just to stretch yourself a little, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, but even these players would go on to achieve like elite status.
I think they would. You see, I think if you have that sort of that career trajectory, I mean, I find myself, I played the bots and I sort of a slight improvement, but then I mean, I keep challenging against really good players and they kick my ass. I mean, it's and it can be demoralizing when you're just, no one likes to make losing a habit, and it can seriously knock your confidence.
Yeah, there's a sweet spot somewhere.
There is, and I think it's just getting to a certain number of users where there will be a lot more around your level. And let's say you guys log on to Apters today. There's plenty of people around your level that you can either just beat, or that will give you a really good game, or who might just beat you, to stretch your game. Whereas I think for my level and below, there's not a whole lot of choice. It's either win easily or get beaten.
We've covered like pretty much all of your countdown experience and got quite an insight into your mindset on countdown and other things generally. So I think we've pretty much covered everything. Is there anything in particular you wanted to talk about, Connor?
No. I was just quite honoured to even be asked.
You're very welcome.
And as something, it's just I've spent a lot of my life, like more than half my life now, kind of playing. It's quite refreshing to just kind of talk about it and kind of talk about it at length to other similarly interested people. So thanks for that.
Certain factions sort of they complained about the length. I don't know why. Certain people will not mention. They know who they are, sitting in front of their laptop, staring at a screen for whatever it was, 2 hours and 31 minutes. So they know to do the hoovering or to do the dusting the next time, or to be listening while they're on the train or the bus.
The duration obviously isn't for everyone, but that's in the nature of the format. I think it's it's like
user error. I think Callum.
It's like going to the cinemas and complaining the movie was an hour and a half long and you prefer YouTube clips. Don't go to the movies then.
Yeah. Don't go. Yeah. Director's cut. It's the last director's cut I ever go to. Yeah. We're going to talk about just sort of feedback from the last show. We're going to talk about Luke. So did you happen to watch Luke's run? I
saw most of it. I missed, I think, out of a few of his last few games. I only saw his last one. Mm-hmm. I thought Luke was incredible, but not just the standard, because I guess we know he can produce that, but more how he looked. He looked extremely cool.
He did. He did indeed.
And he looked
cucumber-esque.
He looked as if he was just as if he was just more or less probably the kind of he played line.
Yeah, and that is Luke's personality. I feel. I mean, I don't believe you've met him before, Connor, have you? But
no.
He's a very confident young man.
Yeah, he's confident but not arrogant. He's just very, very composed and cool. I think is a good word to use. Yeah,
at peace with himself, really, isn't he? He knows his ability, and he's not scared to use it.
He's a great guy, and it was great to see his.
No, that came through very, very strongly.
Yeah.
Let's hope that he gets a little bit of competition this series, because I do fear he may have scared off a lot of the potential maybe Apterite entries this season. I hope not. I hope I'm wrong.
It's definitely. Well, we saw in Elliot's series, like just how how exciting a bit of competition can be. For
Yeah.
someone who was obviously as incredibly good as Elliot. That always makes it much more interesting.
Yeah.
Handling the
And I think that's also
expectation, yeah.
I think I know like it's probably a bit of I probably bias my own opinions towards my own successes, but I do think that's when like real countdown is played, is when you're playing other top players.
Yeah.
Like knowing that like every round matters. It's just this is your one shot,
Yep.
rather than sort of dispassionately beating people by 90 points.
Yeah. Yeah.
Chasing a points total as well is very different than trying to get a win.
Yeah,
You might choose your least favorite numbers round just because you know it'll upset your opponent, rather than if you're chasing 1,000 points, you want those 10. You'll go for your one large. I thought Luke was very good at resisting the kind of temptation and the kind of the eyes from Rachel to sort of pick something else. Going. He's no one large. I respected his confidence at doing that.
Yeah, and I think as well, the game is more entertaining when it's played like this. You see players, maybe they go for the risky 8 because because it's a potential 8-point lead over their opponent. I think sometimes in heat games, you often get players playing too much within themselves.
Stick to the 7, get the 7 points. Don't risk a 0.
Exactly. Yeah, don't risk it. A little bit same with the conundrum sometimes, instead of like trying to get it really fast, just taking a little bit of time. You want to see, well, I guess you want to see hard conundrums, but you want to see players really just pushing their own abilities as far as possible.
We want to see Luke sweat a little. He's been far too cool, hasn't he? We want to see if there's a bead of sweat appears on his brow, if he's put under a little bit of pressure, rather than it just being a procession,
Exactly, and I'm sure he'd probably want the same thing himself.
Nah. He'd want it easy. He'd want no pressure, easy peasy. Win by 100
just a little bit.
We all do. So sorry, Luke, if you're listening. We do want to see you sweat a little. So we hope the producers have been recruiting well. So you're looking forward to Lincoln? You're going to Lincoln?
It's the first time I've been for a few years, so
cool.
I particularly enjoy the social scene.
Yeah, me too. I can never beat you guys, so I have to have a drink with you or something. So
yeah, and Lincoln is kind of best for this. Well, just for fun.
Yeah, that's what I've said before. Obviously, it's going to be Paul's first Lincoln, but I think you really will notice, Paul, that it is. I think for me anyway, and for a lot of people, it is the most social event. So I'm sure you'll really enjoy that.
Well, I'm gonna repeat my request yesterday. If anyone has an acoustic guitar, because I'm flying Ryanair and I didn't book. So if anyone has an acoustic guitar they can borrow from a friend, put it in the back of the car and bring it to Lincoln, I would be most grateful. And I will be looked after like it's my own. So there must be someone. They're all saying, no, I don't know anyone else. What is this? Come on, we all enjoy a bit of music. Someone must know someone.
There's normally a piano at the venue, if nothing else.
Piano, yeah. I know. I can play a little bit of piano, but I'm no Richard Clayderman, so.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Right. Well, I think that'll do. We'll let you go and get on about your day again. But that was excellent. I really enjoyed that. Now.
No, thanks very much.
We'll see you at Lincoln.
Yeah, see you in a couple of weeks.
See you soon.
All right, that'll do. Cheers, man. Bye.
Okay, so that was our chat with Connor Travers, for sure one of the greats of the game.
And still only 28.
Yeah, it's amazing how much he's achieved at such a young age. And the thing with Connor, when you speak to him, is always a fascinating person to speak to, because he's got such a bright mind. You know, obviously a lot of people who play this game are pretty smart cookies, but I think sometimes when you find yourself speaking to a truly intelligent person, you can tell you're that their minds working at a very high level, and Connor's one
They
of
use
those.
high octane fuel. Yeah, I mean, that was that interview gave me goosebumps at times. It was he's a true legend of the game, and I hope to get more interviews of that caliber.
Yeah, he is. He's absolutely, like we said in his intro, perhaps the most iconic name in the history of the game, and deservedly so. And not just Countdown as well. Just in general, he's a highly intelligent man, and it's always fascinating.
And a
to
top
chat with him.
bloke.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, yeah. So we really enjoyed speaking to him, and we're really looking forward to seeing him again at Lincoln in a few days. And before we go today, we'd just like to pay our tributes to Phil Collins, who was a member of our community who sadly passed away this month. Phil was a long-standing member of the Countdown community, particularly on Apterous, where he organised many tournaments and was a regular contributor to ideas and tickets and discussions. And in doing so, he really helped to foster the social atmosphere of the online hubs of our community that have enabled us all to be part of this big Countdown family. And Phil's friendly nature towards his fellow members of the community, especially the newcomers, is one of the things that made him such a valued and respected and admired member of this community. He'll be greatly missed, and our thoughts are with Supe and Phil's family and friends at this time.
So that's episode 2 wrapped up. We hope you join us next month. We're not sure who we have yet, but we'll let you know in due course.
Yes, and in the meantime, if you do have any more feedback on what you liked about the podcast, or anything you think we could do differently or better, or if you have any ideas for different names if you don't like the current name, please do get in touch with us. We have the email address, which is focaltalkpodcast@gmail.com, or you can get in touch with us on the Apterous or C4 Countdown pages for this release, or if you know me and Paul well, I'm sure you can communicate with us in whatever way you normally communicate with us.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.